With the,
If we take part in today's,
No, if you have to go, it's part of the record.
Only if you
We
take,
have to swear in.
only if you take the picture. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the way.
yeah, just waiting on Leo. Hopefully he's here.
yeah, exactly, there's a bird, that's who the public wants to
I
have.
found a
So
number,
even
but
if
it's ringing out.
we didn't do it,
She's got a different opinion on this.
well, I think they want some sort of action, even if we
Verizon Wireless,
violated the
your call
15.
cannot be completed as dialed. Please check again.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This special emergency meeting of the Licensing Board on Tuesday, May 5th is now in order. The item on the agenda is Bally's Corporation, DBA Bally's Restaurant. The members of the board today, to my left is Ron Martin, myself, Pedro Torres, the chairman, Lieutenant Conway from the Lawrence Police Station, Pat Ruiz from Inspectional Services, and Lieutenant Paul Macaron from the Lawrence Fire Department.
it's being televised.
This meeting is being televised, so anybody representing Bally's Corporation, feel free to come up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sal Tabit. I'm an attorney with an office in Methuen, Massachusetts. I represent Bally's Corp., doing business as Bally's Restaurant. With me today is Juan Hidalgo, the president of that corporation, and the individual who's the manager on the liquor license, which is at issue this evening. Before we begin, because I know you're going to ask Lieutenant Conway to address the board, I understand you're going to have this hearing, but for purposes of the preservation of the record for any future court action or for any future appeal, I just want to put on the record that we are objecting to this hearing going forward today. Under Chapter 138, Section 23, which is the section that applies to this particular license, this board has the right to modify, suspend, revoke, take discipline on an action on a license of the sort that Mr. Hidalgo holds, after a hearing and an opportunity to be heard. Presumably that's happening today. However, given the very short notice, given the fact that we have received a one-page, barely, if that, police report, which, as I understand it, leaves a lot out because of an ongoing investigation, I would argue that we are not going to have a full opportunity to be heard, in the sense that we will not perhaps be able to defend ourselves against all allegations. Second, this license is a common vicular all-alcohol license. As such, I believe it's actually before you tonight under Section 138. However, common vicular licenses can also be given out under Chapter 140. To the extent that it is applicable, that statute requires at least a 10-day written notice to the licensee prior to a hearing. So I just simply wanted to put that on the record to preserve my client's rights, understanding that we are going to go forward this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, we're gonna hear from Lieutenant Conway.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Sean Conway, Lawrence Police Department. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to read a report. Incident number 15003-489, A is an alpha. This is, date of incident is May 1st, 2015 at 1 o'clock in the morning. Date reported, 5/1/15. 3 o'clock in the morning, it was written. It's a homicide type of investigation at 59 Essex Street, Valley Nightclub. I'm reading the report of Patrolman Christopher D. Bussey. On 5/1/2015, he was assigned to a Uniform Patrol Division of the Lawrence Police Department, along with his partner, Officer Scott McCabe. The designated patrol area was the downtown area, which is Essex Street area. On about 1 a.m., they were dispatched along with other officers to 59 Valley Street, 59 Essex Street, excuse me, Valley Restaurant and Bar for a large fight. While en route, dispatch advised, that was advised by callers that were reporting a man had been shot in the bathroom. Upon arrival, he observed patrons running outside. McCabe and Bussey made their way into the men's room, where he observed a male suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to the facial area. 2 minutes later, EMTs and from Lawrence General arrived, assisted with them in treating the victim. The victim had no pulse and was suffering from severe wounds to the face with heavy bleeding. A paramedic arrived, determined the victim was no longer viable and treatment would be fruitless based on the severity of the injuries. McCabe, Melendez, and Petalaro maintained the scene security, holding the remaining patrons and employees to be interviewed. The scene was turned over to Detectives Andrew and Cueva.
Pat, you wanna?
Yes, just want to say that on Friday, we went and we did a inspection of Bally's, and there was a few violations from the fire department, electrical inspector, also the building inspector, and what else was it? And what else was it? Oh, and the plumbing inspector. And some violations were discovered. I know that you're working on some, those violations. And I just gave Attorney Tabit the violation notices. So we just, we would like for you to, to work on those. And once you're done with those, just let us know, and we'll go back and do the inspections.
Nate?
Before we go any further, I'd like to ask Attorney Boddy, are you aware of the objections that they're filing?
I'm aware of the objections. My understanding is tonight's meeting is informational only. I think that there are further matters that need to be discussed. But also, I understand, where's the switch on this there? Also, I understand that there's some additional material to be coming in terms of reports and things of that nature. So, and I also noticed that the board only is comprised of 2 members tonight, is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's another issue with this as well.
So what is your
We do have a quorum, but
What is your recommendation?
I've spoken twice with attorney for the license holder over several issues, some procedural, some substantive. I've also spoken with inspectional services, as well as having spoken with the police liaison, Lieutenant Conway. Based on all of that, and what I understand that is going to be a primarily informational session, the incident report, at least the initial incident report's been read into the record. I would recommend that the board take the matter under advisement. From what I understand from inspectional services and the police, that they've been cooperating fully in the investigation, and that they have taken mind of the severity of the incident and have immediately stopped business, I think at least until tonight, for purposes of allowing the investigation to be conducted. And out of respect to the board, all of those are cooperative and favorable. So my recommendation would be, since it's been read into the record and the parties are here, Having heard council's objection, if the board having a quorum but not having a full complement of members, if the board so inclined, they could take the matter under advisement, and if further hearing and further discipline is necessary, an additional notice could go out.
Mr. Body, while certainly this board has the ability to take this under advisement, since it's informational, I would think that the board would want to hear information from the owner of the property as well. This is a public meeting. You posted it 48 hours in advance. There was a large public here who I suspect has an interest in this, and regardless of whether this board is going to take this under advisement and reconvene in a more formal session, which you have every right to do, I would suggest that we also have a right to address the issues raised by Lieutenant Conway and by Mr. Body. You do, in fact, have a quorum, so if you wanted to act now, you could. I'm not suggesting that you should, but I am suggesting that you should at least hear us out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we should consider this on an information basis, because there's a lot of rumors going out there, what happened, and I think us as the board, we need to know exactly what happened. So
I
I'm willing
appreciate that.
to listen to you.
I do. Thank you. There are a couple of things, first of all, that I want to dispel. It's been widely reported in media outlets and in other locations that Bally's is somehow a nightclub, and that this incident occurred in a nightclub. The truth of the matter is that it's not a nightclub. It's a restaurant, like many restaurants through the city. It holds less than 100 people. It has a small bar at the front that might hold 25 to 30 people. And unlike other places in the city that we all know purport to be restaurants and are in fact not, this is a restaurant. It's a place where they have a lunch buffet where professionals from outside the city and inside come to eat. It's a place where people take their families. And to suggest somehow that this is a nightclub shooting is preposterous, given the fact that over the past 11 years there's been not a single incident of this sort or any similar sort at Bally's Restaurant. That's the first thing. The second thing, and I will defer to Lieutenant Conway, I certainly do not want to hinder the police investigation. Ultimately, that's the most important thing here. And Lieutenant Conway knows how much respect I have for the department, for your board, and for the investigation. But I think that it's important, because I think it was read in the report that was read into the record, that there's been an allegation that there was somehow a fight at Bally's. That is not the case. And I think that, I don't know if Lieutenant Conway can actually speak to it or not, but ultimately there was video presented to the police department because Bally's cooperated fully, which led, I would suggest, to the identification of perhaps a suspect that perhaps they would not have otherwise known or understood, all because of the cooperation of the employees at Bally's and Mr. Hidalgo himself. This incident happened between two people who were sitting at the bar area. It happened after the lights had come on and people were being ushered out of the building. There was no disturbance, there was no fight, there was no call until after the shooting. Now, Section 23 of Chapter 138, indicates that action can be taken on a license if the license holder has committed a violation or a crime or has allowed one to occur. Now, what you're suggesting, if you take any action on this license, is that somehow Bally's Restaurant or Bally's Corporation, Mr. Hidalgo, were responsible for allowing this action to happen. Now, the reason that that's in the statute is because we all know that there are places where there's gambling going on, there's prostitution going on, there are illegal machines in the place. We all know that occurs, and the owners know it themselves. That's the type of violation they're talking about here. Not someone who has done everything right, hasn't committed a crime, didn't know what was going on, and someone follows someone else into a bathroom, and let's call it, I know the police won't say this, but I will say this, it was an execution. Someone wanted to kill someone that night. It happened to be Bally's. But it could have been any other place, and it's happened Our society right now is violent in a nature that we have not seen previously. People are shooting up movie theaters. Are we closing down those movie theaters? They're going into hospitals. Are we closing them down? Mr. Hidalgo was in Florida, immediately told his team what to do and came back, cooperated fully with the police and inspectional services. He's done absolutely nothing wrong and should have absolutely no discipline on this license. Furthermore, out of respect for the city and out of respect for the victim, Mr. Hidalgo chose to close his restaurant for 5 to 6 days since the incident occurred. I advised him not to do it. He was under no legal obligation to do it. You couldn't, with all due respect, have enforced it. And he told me, no, I think it's the right thing to do. But I want you to also understand that Mr. Hidalgo is responsible for approximately the employment or the livelihood of 20 to 50 families that depend on him, that depend on that restaurant. That's a lot of people. And he's been getting phone calls from those employees asking when they're going to open because they need to be paid, they need to pay rent, they need to feed their families. And had he done something wrong, had he been a repeat offender, if he had known of the incidents occurring, it'd be one thing. But to take discipline on a business that has run itself, I can't say perfectly, okay, but with very few blemishes, if any, over an 11-year period of time, to suggest that somehow his license should be disciplined in some way, despite the fact that he's done everything right, what kind of message does that send to the business owners in this community that are doing everything right? And I understand that they are not all doing everything right, and I also understand why you had to have this meeting. We get it. It's a very serious matter. I understand. And you need to inquire, you need to do your jobs. It's important because you have to protect the city as Lieutenant does and as the fire department does, and we understand that. But having this fleshed out, at the end of it, I would hope that you come to appreciate the help Mr. Hidalgo gave and not punish him for it. Also, beyond that, I know that there's been some talk, and Mr. Torres, you've mentioned, rumors and such, and many people have wondered, why isn't there more security? Why aren't there metal detectors? Well, there is security at Bally's. There are no metal detectors because it's a restaurant. And there are plenty of restaurants in the city that are open to 1, just like Bally's is, and you don't have people wanding them down or frisking them as they come into the location. So I understand it's informational, and I'm sorry if I get heated a little bit, but I just think it's important to convey how strongly we feel about our position. And with all due respect, I think that we're on good legal footing as well, besides, quite frankly, being on good moral footing, because he hasn't done anything wrong. So I apologize if I've come off a little hot. I just wanted to make sure that we expressed everything we needed to before you take it under advisement and reconvene at a further date. Thank you.
Attorney Tabit, you got to realize that we're in a very awkward position here, too. I mean, it's a dangerous situation at the lower end of Essex Street. It's congested with nightclubs or liquor establishments, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. So we have to send a strong message to the others, too. There has been a murder in a location, and it's an informational meeting tonight, but we just want to send a message to the other club owners that any incidents that occur, we're going to take swift and firm action. And it saddens me, because I've lived here all my life, it saddens me to see the lower end of Essex Street to turn into that, a combat zone. And it's a magnet for undesirables. They're not an asset to the city. And we've got elderly projects there, we've got the Washington Mill Apartments, and it affects everyone in the city, because the people that have stayed here, their property values are going down with the publicity that we just got this past weekend. So this is where we're coming from also. So that's all I'd like to say.
I certainly understand that and respect that.
The only question I have tonight is he doing anything to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, quite frankly, I don't know what you can do if someone is intent on killing someone, okay? But having said that, what we have discussed perhaps is, look, we understand that there are some restaurants that are open until 1 in the morning. Not all restaurants are open until 1 in the morning. What we're suggesting is a security measure of pat frisking and perhaps wanding down people between the hours of 11 and 1. And I would say that we could do that more often, except for this. I've just mentioned that Bally's is a restaurant. On Sundays, families go to eat there. Can you imagine taking your family in to eat somewhere where the people coming in are being frisked and they're being wanded down? It would be terrible for business, it'd be terrible for the reputation, but we do understand that we're open a little bit later than some other places, not all, because many restaurants are open the same hours. But we are willing to take that measure until further notice of the board, or until we reconvene for that, 2-hour period. Again,
No, after he's done.
Mr. Hidalgo doesn't just own a restaurant. He does, when you talk about a club, he does own a club, but it's a different location. And security measures there are different precisely because of the different nature of the two entities. But we have had discussions with security over there to at least for those 2 periods, because quite frankly, I understand that, families for the most part are not going to be coming in at 11 o'clock at night. However, there are second shift workers who get out around that time that come to Bally's to eat. It's one of the few restaurants that serves food right up until 12:30 because people come late. Workers, not families at that point. But I think that that's a measure that I think we can take, and I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I would like to respond in regards to the wanding. June 1st, the new rules and regulations for the nightclubs will go into effect. And after 11 o'clock, every nightclub or restaurant that's going to be open from 11 on, they're gonna need to have a wand or have a metal detector. So that's part of the regulations.
Ruiz, if
Yeah.
I may.
Yeah.
Are you telling me, what's the date of that?
June 1st.
June 1st. And that's not just clubs, but restaurants as well?
Restaurants also.
Because if that's the case,
Yeah.
then we will just start now.
Yeah,
We'll
that is the
start
case.
before
And,
anyone else,
Attorney
if that's the
Body-
case.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a copy. here.
Alcohol restaurants.
Yes.
All
Restaurants with
alcohol.
alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so for tonight, I'm willing to entertain a motion that we table this matter till the full police investigation has come into this board.
I'll make that motion.
So there's a motion on the table to table this matter to the full police information has come into the board. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
What's that? Yeah.
What is it they say, justice?